To the final debate of the day on Neath Port Talbot Magistrates Court, I call Mr. Peter Hain.
Mr. Pritchard, thank you, and thank you for chairing the session. I look forward to you presiding over it. I ask the government to reverse their decision to close Neath Magistrates Court, which has served the town for generations. Written records show that from the early 18th century, and probably much earlier, when situated in the castle from which the town in Welsh Castell Neath gets its name, magistrates were so busy in Neath that they sat almost continuously, and not just for the 4 times a year as in other places. The current facility has been open since 1977. Although I'm grateful to the Secretary of State for his courtesy in meeting me on 2 occasions, I totally refute his letter to me of the 5th of February 2004 confirming his decision to close the Neath Magistrates Court and move it to Swansea. I challenge the costing presented to justify the closure, and I believe it will have a seriously damaging impact upon the quality of local justice. I challenge also some of his basic facts, which are simply wrong, for instance, on Neath Court's usage. And although I presented a credible low-cost alternative, which would have enabled savings to be delivered, namely a transfer to the nearby county court facility, which is underused and which could easily be modified to house the magistrates' court, this too was rejected, indeed seemingly arbitrarily, causing deep local anger. Over 1,800 signatures were collected in a matter of a few weeks on a petition circulating in the town. Having examined the Secretary of State, of course.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving way and congratulate him very warmly on his success in securing this adjournment debate. The points that he's making with regard to local feeling is a very strong one. Would you agree with me that one of the central tenets of our common law system that we are very proud of, that's been developed over centuries alongside trial by jury and the appointment of local magistrates, is the importance of the delivery of local justice locally? He has made that point. I make it. My constituents share his concerns because, as he quite rightly says, the Neath Magistrates Court actually is called the Neath Port Talbot Magistrates Court.
Indeed, and I'm happy to be corrected by my honourable friend who's in the neighbouring constituency, Mr. Pritchard. Having examined the Secretary of State's argument, the proposal document and the consultation response put forward by Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Services, I'm convinced the transfer of the Magistrates' Court service from Neath to Swansea will severely and detrimentally affect the town, its citizens, and erode the provision of local justice for local people, a point eloquently made by my honourable friend. This decision to merge has been driven purely by cost reduction and as part of an exercise across England and Wales ongoing since 2010, which has seen 130 courts closed. In recent years, the Neath and Port Talbot area has lost 2 magistrates' courts, in Pontardawe and in Port Talbot. The loss of this 3rd and final magistrates' court in the county borough will leave nearly 140,000 people, a population bigger than Middlesbrough or Cambridge, without a magistrates' court. Instead, the Swansea court would serve a population of 380,000 people. Local topography, transport and economic issues have been completely disregarded. The timing of the consultation was perhaps no coincidence, coming as it did alongside the start of work on Neath Port Talbot County Borough Council's long-awaited regeneration of the town. The implication in the executive summary of the consultation document and the impact assessment of August 2013 that there was no other option because the County Borough Council required the land seems designed to lay the blame firmly at the doorstep of the local authority. Yet Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service had known about the County Borough Council's intention since 2008, when alternative venues were being explored, including a new courtroom nearby. Even at that time, the suggestion I made in the representations to the Secretary of State to move the Magistrates' Court to the county court just 300 metres away was being examined. Neath Port Talbot had even budgeted in its own contribution for the estimated cost, 1.4 million, to facilitate the move. Had this been pursued at the time, and any problems identified overcome, which I believe could easily have been the case, then not only would the government have made its savings, but Neath would have retained its magistrates. There are far greater costs associated with the proposed merger of Neath Port Talbot Court with Swansea than would occur with the conversion of Neath County Court to a new Neath Port Talbot Magistrates Court. There would be minimal additional operating costs for such a new court facility in Neath, as the Crown Court is already fully functioning, no additional travel costs for magistrates or staff, and free car parking means there would be no additional car parking fees. In fact, if the county court were to be utilised as a magistrates court, then there will be a net saving of operating facilities costs estimated at between £110,000 and £100,000 per annum, which includes utility costs, cleaning, waste disposal, security and maintenance, as these are all in place already in the county court. The projected enabling cost of the Swansea merger is £165,000, but this figure will in fact be significantly greater, and I give notice to the Secretary of State that should he continue to disregard our representations in the case I'm making to the Minister today, I'll be very carefully monitoring what these costs actually are and reporting them. Court 6 in Swansea, for example, has no retiring room. Court 5 has neither a secure dock nor secure access egress for magistrates, so could not be used for criminal cases. To correct these deficiencies, major alterations will be required, even if these are physically feasible. Only criminal cases would be heard in Swansea Magistrates Court after a merger, with all family work being transferred to the Swansea Civil Justice Building. Increased annual travel costs after a merger would be £55,000 for those involved. Had these figures been objectively analysed, then not only would the government have made its savings, but Neath would have retained its magistrates' court, albeit in a new location. There must be the suspicion, therefore, Mr. Pritchard, that the decision to close Neath Court and merge with Swansea was taken by the government with little or no investigation of the real costs or real savings involved, and it would seem to follow that the consultation exercise was undertaken with there being little or no intention whatsoever to take any notice when the facts were clarified, demonstrating that it would be far less costly to convert the county court than to move and merge Neath Magistrates with Swansea. The option to convert Neath County Court with the adjacent cells in the police cell to be connected by a secure walkway to the new court is supported by local magistrates, local politicians, the local police and local court users. Neath no longer require the cells, but the police in Neath no longer require the cells, but do wish to retain a presence in Neath. As there's this low-cost option for a new court in Neath, there's absolutely no justification for merging the court with Swansea. It is still a viable alternative which can deliver savings, together with a figure in excess of £300,000 obtained by selling the existing building to Neath Port Talbot County Borough Council, more than enough for a careful remodelling of the county court. To press ahead with the merger of Neath and Swansea Magistrates Court will conversely incur transition costs estimated to be at least £150,000, and with the additional travel cost estimated to be at least £50,000 annually, as well as costs through the establishment of a new digital service proposed by the Secretary of State, which would have to be housed in the county court in Neath anyway. This facility would also require staffing by relevant personnel, a legal advisor and usher, duplicating the staffing in Swansea Magistrates. Only one video link can operate at any given time, and the Swansea courts will grind to a halt if solicitors and defendants have to liaise via a video link and not face-to-face. Few witnesses will choose to attend Swansea Magistrates Court for a trial if video link facilities exist locally in Neath, thus denying magistrates the opportunity to assess the countenance of witnesses when giving evidence, which can be a crucial and even determining factor in their assessments. Even in the original deeply flawed impact assessment produced by Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service, it was not clear on the extent of savings from the closure. This did not adequately take into account the increased travel and parking charges that would accrue in Swansea. As the Neath County Court is fully functioning and has adequate security at present, there would be no increase in total running costs if the County Court became the Magistrates' Court. Indeed, there would be savings to both court services by merging overheads. To accommodate the magistrates, the family and civil work currently undertaken in the County Court could easily be transferred to the Justice Centre in Port Talbot. This building cost £3 million some 5 years ago, and at present its usage averages just 13%. As there are no cells in the Port Talbot building, criminal cases cannot be heard there, but the transfer of civil work will increase its utilisation. Thus, the County Court could become the new Neath Magistrates Court, and the Justice Centre in Port Talbot could become the new Family and Civil Justice Centre. Situated just 8 miles from Neath to Port Talbot, the journey time would be considerably less than the proposed increased journey time to Swansea from many towns and valley villages. The times and distances quoted in the consultation document are deeply inaccurate and ignore the difficulties of travelling from valley communities like Banwin and Gleneath and Onployne, where a simple journey to Swansea can involve 2 or 3 buses and well over an hour to complete a journey. Getting to Swansea Court involves negotiating Fabian Way, notorious for long delays due to the volume of traffic, especially at peak times, and add half an hour onto a journey. That, of course, is on a good day, when the bus services run well, whereas quite often the tricky topography and poor weather means longer and more convoluted journeys. In a county borough where 30% of households do not have a car, the difficulties of public transport should surely have been recognised instead of simply ignored by the government. Even if the Secretary of State, as he indicated to me, is less concerned about inconvenience to defendants, then surely he should be for witnesses, victims, and court staff who would have to make the same trek to attend at Swansea Court, incurring additional running costs. We must also remember that magistrates are unpaid volunteers. They're the bedrock of the justice system in this country. And in Neath, we have notably dedicated and able magistrates serving in a well-respected team. To suppose that they will just move wherever the courts and tribunals service decide, adding gratuitously to their precious volunteering time, is to presuppose and expect an awful lot of them. Many living in Neath will be thinking long and hard about whether they wish to relocate, and for prospective magistrates, they will certainly think twice if it means not being able to deliver local justice locally, to continue to serve the local community they cherish, and in Neath's case, are proud of. The staff, to whom I must pay tribute, have acted with great resilience over the last few weeks, with such uncertainty over their futures, and during the recent storms which saw a huge upheaval for the workforce when the Neath Court roof blew off. But I'll come back onto that later. Despite the assurances to the contrary, I'm very concerned that the closure of Neath Magistrates will result in possible redundancies for staff that live locally and cannot commit to a longer commute. The suggestion in the consultation document that some staff and judiciary may experience slightly higher costs having to travel further to the receiving court is disingenuous, given that increased costs are almost a certainty because of the much longer distance to travel and the high cost of parking in Swansea. The loss of their local knowledge will be a huge blow to local justice. Local solicitors representing defendants in Neath will inevitably relocate to Swansea to be closer to Swansea Magistrates Court. A number of solicitors' firms in Neath are key employers in Neath Town and provide well-paid, skilled jobs, leaving a gaping hole in the economy. Access to the probation services based in Neath Courthouse will be affected. They'll also need to redeploy their staff. There'll be upheaval and a cost effect on the Youth Offending Service, the Victim Support Service and Witness Service, who all often work with the most vulnerable in our communities. Relocating all these professional and support jobs will also significantly damage the local economy. It's wrongly asserted, Mr. Pritchard, that at present Neath courtrooms are 55.3% used. This is calculated on there being 3 courts available for criminal work, whereas there are in fact 2 courts suitable for criminal work which have a secure dock and secure access to the cells. The correct calculation would be 75% usage in Neath Court building. Swansea has 74% usage and Cardiff 59%. Of the current 16 magistrates' courts in in Wales, 10 have utilisation figures well below those in Neath. On efficiency, Neath Court staff and magistrates have an exemplary record. Cases are dealt with swiftly and efficiently, fines are collected, and court utilisation is often amongst the highest in Wales. Neath compares very well with Swansea, Merthyr and Cardiff in all areas. There's no justification for the closure of the Neath Court on the grounds of efficiency, and detailed and up-to-date figures are available to substantiate that statement. It's also the case that, unlike other areas of the United Kingdom, crime in South Wales is actually increasing, and the number of cases being heard in magistrates' courts is going to increase as a result of the Lord Chancellor's review of out-of-court disposals instigated in 2013. Recent damage caused to the roof of Neath Magistrates, now repaired, by bad weather caused all the work to be transferred to Swansea Court, and although it's since been repaired, as I say, the staff and magistrates from Neath coped brilliantly. They were welcomed by the staff and magistrates in Swansea, who did everything they could to make them comfortable. But there's no avoiding the fact that justice suffered, and this is the key point I wish to make, Mr. Pritchard. There's no avoiding the fact that justice suffered, particularly as Swansea's courtrooms 5 and 6 are not fit for criminal court work. All the evidence shows that if Neath is merged with Swansea, the same would happen, except this time permanently. One case example illustrates this. There was a joint alleged assault. The defendants were in a relationship. They received the letter reminding them of the new venue, Swansea, for their trial. But the accused woman, a drug addict, had to get her methadone prescription from her chemist at 9 a.m. and then try to get a bus to Swansea. Receiving the methadone and taking it to the chemist, as addicts have to prevent them selling the methadone on the street to buy heroin, she missed the 9:15 bus but caught the 9:45. Her partner had given her the fare, leaving him with no money. He eventually found a friend and borrowed the fare. Meanwhile, the court began hearing the case, and as the defendants were not present, there was considerable delay whilst options were considered. Then the women arrived, and so the trial began again. An arrest warrant was issued for the co-defendant. Just as it seemed the trial was concluding, he arrived. The arrest warrant was cancelled and the trial concluded. 1.5 hours of precious court time was totally wasted. Had the trial been in Neath, both defendants would have arrived before 10 and the trial would have been concluded by 10:45. It may seem trivial compared with the work in our Crown Courts, but if there is to be justice for all, then there must be courts available to deal with the less high-profile cases as well. The temporary arrangements demonstrated that despite the best efforts of Neath staff and Swansea staff, Swansea Magistrates Court was ill-equipped to handle the additional work and the delivery of local justice. Indeed, it was pushed to a tipping point of being unworkable. Whilst these were extraordinary circumstances, the proposal to move Neath to Swansea will make this the norm. Mr. Pritchard, I conclude by saying this. These events have highlighted the fact that the Courts and Tribunal Service have no contingency plans for these situations and will have major problems of organisation and viability, which makes both the decision over Neath and the refusal to countenance the alternative move of Neath magistrates into the county court very short-sighted and damaging indeed. If Neath Port Talbot Court is merged with Swansea Magistrates Court, then public money will be wasted, and this is unacceptable at a time of government cuts everywhere. Therefore, I urge the Secretary of State and the Minister to take this back to him, to reverse his decision and transfer Neath Port Talbot magistrates to the local county court. Local justice should be carried out by local people in a local venue. It is the fundamental principle of our justice system. Should the Secretary of State nevertheless push ahead, regardless, then he will be responsible for the erosion of local justice. I put it to the Minister and to him that Neath is an exception in the list for countrywide magistrates' court closures because there is an alternative solution which will save the overall court service money. I strongly urge him to change his mind and allow common sense to prevail. Thank you, Mr. Pritchard.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. May I say what a pleasure it is to serve under your chairmanship this afternoon. And may I also start by thanking the Right Honourable Gentleman for securing this debate and thank him for his continued interest in this subject. And as is clear from the comments that he made and indeed his record on Hansard, this is a subject on which he has taken a huge amount of interest. Mr. Pritchard, I appreciate that the Lord Chancellor's decision to proceed with the closure of Neath Magistrates Court is a disappointment, a deep disappointment to the Right Honourable Member, who I know has already twice met with the Justice Secretary, as he mentioned in his speech. And on one occasion he met with others who presented a petition to the Justice Secretary opposing the closure. At these meetings and throughout the consultation process, we have listened carefully to the points raised against the proposal to close the court. The consultation on the future of Neath Magistrates Court was published on 26 September 2013. The consultation proposed that the Magistrates Court should close and that the work should move to Swansea Magistrates Court, which is 9 miles away. The consultation paper set out that Neath Port Talbot Borough Council wished to purchase the Neath Magistrates Court site and demolish the court to enable development of the site as part of their plans to regenerate the town centre. Mr. Pritchard, the impact assessment of the consultation concluded that the closure of Neath Magistrates Court will result in savings of £220,000 per year, whereas retaining and undertaking the required maintenance to the court would require a minimum of £1.3 million to be spent. A number of factors were taken into consideration. I will give way.
Is he talking about a new court building, or is he talking about the transfer to the county court? Because I don't believe that figure is the case for the county court.
The Honourable Gentleman has made it abundantly clear from his speech that he has looked into all the figures, and one thing is abundantly clear, is that whatever figures I give, he's not going to be satisfied. I have a limited amount of time, because the Right Honourable Gentleman used more time than is customary for the person who holds the debate, and I'm very keen to ensure that I put on the record the government's view. So he will forgive me if I don't repeat the figures, but I will state them as I see them. What I will say, however, is that as far as figures are concerned, and I will come to the county court issue shortly, but to the maintenance of the work, for the present Neath Magistrates Court would be 1.3 million, rather than a new building. A number of factors were taken into consideration before developing the consultation proposals. These included the workload, current and projected future utilisation, and whether there was a suitable alternative location where the work could be accommodated without a detrimental impact on service levels. When the consultation was published, local stakeholders, partners and elected officials were directly engaged to ensure that they were aware of the proposals and could provide a considered response before the consultation closed. The consultation was conducted in line with the process set out by my predecessor's written ministerial statement on 17th July of last year. This statement set out future consultations on courts and tribunals and set out that they would be locally focused, run for 6 weeks, and reduce parliamentary and administrative bureaucracy. Any proposals on the future of a court are considered with emphasis on the local area and how justice would be most efficiently delivered there. 63 responses were received to the consultation, and I'm happy to put on the record that most respondents supported the closure of the courthouse on its current site to enable the regeneration of Neath Town Centre. But I'm also happy to put on record that most responses also argued for the retention of a magistrates' court within the town's boundaries. This is a view that is clearly shared by the Right Honourable Member, and I understand many local magistrates. I'm aware that the Right Honourable Member discussed this during meetings with my Right Honourable friend, the Justice Secretary, and in particular he suggested that Neath and Port Talbot County Court could be converted to conduct magistrates' court hearings. For several years, Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service have been aware of the Council's regeneration plans. There have been a number of informal discussions with the Council about potential options to relocate the Magistrates' Court within Neath. However, the alternative sites suggested by the Council were all in unsuitable shared facilities. A site was identified for a new building, although estimated costs at that time for such a new building were between £6 and £11 million, and simply not affordable. Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service officials have given detailed consideration to the option to relocate to Neath County Court. This would have required the use of a custody facility in the adjacent police station. Whilst there were some preliminary discussions with the Council regarding the funding of this work, costs for a custodial facility were estimated at £1.46 million. No formal agreement was reached with the Council regarding this funding. There would in any case have been additional costs, including an estimated £285,000 to transfer the work of the County Court to Port Talbot Justice Centre. I accept that there will be an impact for court users, justices and staff. Many will have to travel to attend court in Swansea, including some who will have to use public transport. However, I do not believe that this prevents access to the court system or compromises the quality of the service provided. Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service will seek to make arrangements for customers who are unable to attend court at a particular time and will continue to explore ways to reduce the impact of the closure to court users. And may I just say that when it comes to travel, and I take on board what the Right Honourable Gentleman says about the number of people who do not have cars in his area, but it is the case that travel to Swansea will be within an hour by car, and for those using public transport, 65% will have travel times of less than an hour, and 90%. Those using public transport, 65% will have travel times of less than an hour, and travel times will also be reduced for people living nearer to Swansea. For those who use trains, because there is a train facility, the extra time of travel is 15 minutes each way, with trains running every half hour. To continue, Mr. Pritchard, the discussions are currently discussions are currently underway with South Wales Police to consider whether it is possible to establish a facility for vulnerable witnesses to give evidence in criminal proceedings via a live video link from a location in the Neath area. This would provide a safe and secure environment and avoid the need for victims and witnesses to travel to court, improving their experience when giving evidence at trial. Contrary to the concern previously expressed by the Right Honourable Member, Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunals do not intend to locate any video link facility to Swansea Magistrates Court from Neath County Court. Since the decision to close Neath Magistrates Court was announced, the Right Honourable Member is aware that the court has suffered extensive storm damage during the adverse weather conditions experienced during February 2014. During this time, court business and staff were temporarily transferred to Swansea Magistrates Court for 10 days to minimise disruption to hearings. This proved to be a successful contingency arrangement, during which time no significant issues were raised. And I appreciate that the Right Honourable Gentleman will disagree on that point, but from our point, it was something that worked well. That Swansea Magistrates Court was able to accommodate this work at very short notice is, I believe, a reassurance that it will be able to successfully absorb the work of Neath Magistrates Court when it closes. Mr. Pritchard, I am pleased to say that following safety inspections and a new fire certificate being issued, hearings resumed at Neath on 3rd March 2014. Officials are currently finalising plans for the smooth transfer of work, justices and staff to Swansea, and an announcement of a closure date for the court will be made locally. As is the case with any publicly funded body, Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service has a duty to ensure its estate is utilised as cost-effectively as possible. We must ensure that we provide value for money for the taxpayer. Let me emphasise, Mr. Pritchard, as I conclude, that the Lord Chancellor's decision to close the court was not taken lightly. It was made after a detailed analysis of the workload of Neath and Swansea courts and in consideration of all the points raised in the consultation responses. Whilst it was clear to the Lord Chancellor that many people in Neath had sincere concerns, including the concerns of the Right Honourable Gentleman, about the closure, on balance, these did not outweigh the benefits of the proposals or suggest that access to court services would be genuinely compromised.
The question is that the sitting be now adjourned. Sitting's adjourned.